Hello and welcome to another Satchel Wellbeing webinar. My name is Jon Tait. I'm going to be your host for this webinar. I'm a Deputy CEO of a multi-academy trust up in North Yorkshire. I'm an education author, speaker, podcast host. I've been in teaching for about 25 years now, and hopefully I'll be able to bring some of my experience on wellbeing and leadership across to you within this webinar. In this webinar, we're specifically going to look at one of the pillars, one of the wellbeing pillars that Satchel have been working on as part of their wellbeing tracker. And this one is about school management. And as a school leader and trust leader myself, I know only too well the importance of that kind of management at all levels of the school and how to make sure that it's really done effectively, it's done well, it's done seamlessly, and that your staff perceive it also to be really, really well, because it's all well and good you thinking that you manage and lead the school well, but actually what's the perception on the ground? How's it felt on the ground? And how does that therefore impact on wellbeing, which is ultimately what we're going to be talking about today. So for those who have seen any of our previous webinars, and if you haven't, go back and look at them. We've done them on all the different areas of the wellbeing pillars that Satchel have kind of identified and described really and codified. You'll notice that I'll dive into the Satchel Pulse Wellbeing Tracker. We'll look at some reflective questions that you can ask yourself as leadership teams before you ask your staff, and start to think about, are we doing these things and how well are we doing these things? Then I will give you 2 practical strategies that you can use in your schools or your trusts, and I'll talk to you about what is it, what do you need, what to avoid, and how to take it further. And I will finish with those. So let me share my screen with you now. Let's dive into the wellbeing tracker. Okay, so across the middle of the screen, you'll be able to see the 8 different pillars that Satchel have come up with, and that actually describe and really codify wellbeing and break it down into different areas. And I mentioned to you that we're going to be looking at school management today, so I'm just going to click on this one on the right-hand side. So what this allows you to do, this tool, it allows you to, I'm just going to click on this drop down and all questions. Sorry, what this allows you to do is to then start to look at using all these questions with your staff and starting to get scores back and looking at what the average is and how that impacts upon your school, all this type of things. So what happens is that on the left-hand side, there's a question that would naturally be asked to staff. On the right-hand side, it then opens up lots of things to think about. So as a leadership team, as a head teacher, an executive leader, a phase leader, a subject leader, actually, are these things happening, and what might our approach be to this? So it's really good to give you some reflection, questions and thoughts. So if I just click on the third one down here, that I think is a good one to begin with. And it says, I feel all the issues raised by the staff are addressed by the school or the department leaders. Interesting one to kind of think about. So on the right-hand side then, it brings up some kind of reflection questions for you as leaders to think about. So the first bullet point says, is there a clear way or a system for staff to raise issues? And is it actually being used by staff? So 2 different questions there to begin with, but actually, how do staff raise issues? Is there a process? And is it being used? Because if it's not being used, it might not be that there's no issues. It might just be that nobody knows how to use it, or there's a culture of fear that nobody wants to use it because they're going to put their name to it, or all these type of things. So it's interesting when you start to dive into these questions and you start thinking, yeah, this is really interesting. We haven't really thought about this before. Second bullet point down says, do issues that are raised actually get resolved? And do staff members get feedback on how it was resolved? Because that's really interesting as well, that we can resolve things, but we might not give the feedback to the people about what we've done and how we've done it and how we're going to move away from those things in the future. So interestingly, just a couple of points there already within that first question. I'll just scroll down a bit further and pick another 2 or 3 out for you here. I feel my school or department is well managed by the leaders. So again, this is the perception of people, classroom teachers or people within those teams. So do the school leaders work together with the staff to achieve the goals and vision for the school? Working together. Because actually, if we're working together and we're working together to achieve those goals, then the likelihood is that those people who are managed by those people will understand where we are, what we're doing, and how well things are being managed. Do the school leaders treat all staff equally? Do they feel valued in their roles? And do school leaders role model the expectations of staff and students well? So really interesting there to kind of think about, well, is that happening in your organization? If I just scroll down a bit further, again, if you are working in a trust, actually, is the school trust or local authority well managed? So actually, that next step up, are people thinking that that's been well managed? And are there any recent changes that would impact on that? And that bottom bullet point there, do staff have a clear understanding of how things are being managed? And is that communication clear in the direction that they're taking and the pathway, and what is that pathway forward? And is there some clear and transparent communication about where we are, what we're doing, and how we're getting there? So really interesting to kind of look at a couple of those things. If I just pick one out, I scroll down a bit further here into the reds. Let me pick on this one here. I'm not affected by my low mood as a result of my job. So in terms of workload, is the workload too much for staff, and is it causing staff to feel ineffective? Are all staff able to access systems to support positive wellbeing? So interestingly for you to kind of think about these things here in your school. Okay, I'm just going to dive in then to a couple of different strategies that I said I will be able to give you. And the first one is very straightforward and very obvious, but sometimes not very well effectively kind of managed within schools. And it's that idea of clear communication. And I don't think anybody or any school leader ever sets out to not be clear with their communication. But unfortunately, because we're so busy, because our schools are fast-moving environments, and because there's so many things happening all the time, sometimes communication can be forgotten, it can be lost in translation. There can be lots of different reasons why it isn't clear. So we need to take a step back from this sometimes and actually evaluate and reflect on, is our communication clear? Has it been clear? Has it been clear enough? And actually the only way you do that is by actually asking people, because it might be clear in your head and you know what you're going to say and you know why you're going to say it, but does the message get out there? So first bullet point here, and the research that Satchel have done on this says that, that one of the biggest causes of work-related stress is poor school management and communication. So we know this is there, and we know that this is causing people stress because they don't know what's happening, or they don't feel things have been done properly. So we need to make sure that's really, really clear in our minds. They need to know that staff need to know that the issues have been dealt with effectively, and that we're continuously trying to improve. And that actually you might know, or your senior leadership team might know things that are happening, and you might be clear on that communication. But does everyone around the school know that? And again, until you ask people, until you then canvass people and find that out, then just what's in your head might not be in anybody else's head. So what do we need to do this then? We just need to do everything we can to open up all of our communication channels, whether that's verbally, whether that's via email, whether that's by kind of monthly or weekly roundups, or there's lots of ways we kind of do this in schools, but just making sure that it's really clear, that it's really transparent, and it has regular progress updates on some of the bigger things and the bigger priorities that you're pushing for, whether that's attendance, whether it's behavior, whether it's uniform, whether it's achievement. Actually, those big things, where are we on that journey? And where are we, and what do we need people to do to really take us to that place? Because you've got to have all of your organization moving towards that same direction if you're going to get there. You're not going to get there if just 2 or 3 people are pulling in one direction, because it's too much of an immovable object. You've got to have everyone moving in the same direction. So this might be, I said in the second bullet point, that could be a regular briefing slot where you talk to people about this and you update staff on key information. And not just the operational things, not just the what's happening today, there's a visitor in, the lunch is early, there'll be a fire drill. Actually, some of those really key points. Here's where we are on our journey towards this. This is where we're currently at. These are the barriers that we're facing at the moment. In our big vision of getting from here to here, this is where we are. This is where we still need to go. And bringing people on that journey with you, because we've got educated people who are interested and they've got lots to offer. So bring them and let them in to the wider picture. What to avoid then? It's easy to make it, sometimes it sound condescending about just giving them information because you have to, and almost like, I have to give you an update on this. Well, actually, it's not about that, because that backfires pretty quickly. And people then start to think and realize quickly that you're only doing it because you feel you have to. And then that's not a nice place to be in. So it should come across in the best examples as a really genuine attempt to open up communication channels so that everyone understands what's happening, and it brings people together, and you bring people on that journey with you. So you've got to be sincere, you've got to be really kind of professional about this, and it's about when do we give that information in what chunks, so that people understand where we're at, rather than kind of, we don't tell you this and we just want you to get on with your job because you're not paid to think about these things. That's not a nice organization to be in either. So bring people into the bigger picture. How can we take it further then? Well, a great idea is a head teacher's video blog. It doesn't need to be anything fancy, put your phone on your desk, and once a fortnight, once a week, once a half term, whatever it is, just get, sit at your desk, and film a short piece on kind of where we're at, what's happening, want to update you on this, or there's been some really great, we've advanced on this, or there's been some great progress made on this. And that's a really nice way of actually making it feel really authentic by you sat at your desk, and you might have someone filming you, or you might just put your phone up, and even that selfie mode feels even more authentic and real, and kind of that one-to-one, like you're speaking to them rather than stood up formally in front of 50 or 100 staff. That kind of feels one-to-one. So very nice and easy way to do it. It's also nice to host like we've said there, a head teacher's coffee evening. And I say evening, after school or afternoon, where people can come and they can ask questions, and where are we at with this, and can I ask about this? And lots of staff will have questions, and sometimes they feel that you are a bit distant from them, as a leader, whether it's a head teacher, exec leader, mid leader, senior leader. Have those opportunities where people can come and ask questions, and you can talk them through where we are, and you can start saying, well, how can you help? And have you got any ideas? And suddenly people who have been asked by the head teacher to do these things suddenly feel, empowered to be able to help out. And that's exactly where I want to get to. Okay, the second strategy then is a staff voice survey, something that a lot of you will be familiar with. But again, how often is it happening? How well is it happening? And is it just happening every now and again, or is it part of a regular scheduled staff voice kind of strategy? So what is it then? Well, as I said there, it's that regular time to officially ask staff about their experiences, and then following up with feedback. So it's a great way to do that. We can do it dead easy with technology now. And you might ask questions on the key areas of the school that you want information on. And being, I think I've said this in another webinar, being comfortable being uncomfortable, getting the answers that you might not want to hear initially, but that's what you need to hear, because that's the only way you're going to be able to move things forward and improve things. So what do you need then? Well, you can use a dedicated survey, a bit of software. You can use things like SurveyMonkey and things like that. But equally, you can create them yourself within Microsoft and Google Forms. Fairly easy to do. It doesn't take a lot of kind of ed tech kind of capability, and you can construct your questions. You can have drop downs, you can have multiple choice, you can have free text, you name it, you can do it. But then once you've got these views, you need to then be able to do something with them. There's no point collecting views and then not doing anything with them, because that's worse than not collecting the views in the first place. So it's about then kind of doing things, or kind of acting on the feedback you've got, because you need to make sure that staff understand that they've been listened to and that things are going to change. So you're not going to promise the world, and you're not going to say we're going to write all these things and we're going to do everything, but we are going to listen to you, and we are going to try and do what we can. But if you go out again for another staff survey and you haven't done anything about what they said last time, then people are going to get sick pretty quickly, and they're either not going to fill it in, or they're going to feel quite annoyed that, well, I gave you this information last time and nothing's changed. So you need to be really, really careful about that. So what to avoid then? First thing is keeping it easy. You don't want staff to be doing surveys every day or every week or every other. You've got to use it sparingly, use it well, and keep the questions to a minimum. You don't want people to be filling it in that takes longer than 4 or 5 minutes. Think about your own kind of experiences of filling surveys in. You want it to be short and sweet. You don't have to be doing it all the time. You want it to be easy to read, easy to fill out, tick, 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 click, click, click. There might be a couple of questions where you might want to add some extra free text, but make it as easy as possible to do it. And then the second bullet point, as I mentioned at the start, really about not wanting to give out these every week, every 2 weeks, etc., because you're probably not going to do anything with the information you collect anyway. So maybe once a half term, once a term, that type of stuff, and use it strategically and sparingly. How to take it further then? Specialize your surveys. So you might want to specialize them in certain areas of the school, rather than having questions on everything in the school in one, which will create it to be quite long anyway. Maybe just have one just on behavior, or just on attendance, or just on working conditions, or just on well-being, or have it so it's specialized, so it frames people's thoughts. There's only a certain amount of questions. It's easy to do, and then you can do that. You might want to do that again later in the year, but actually you're just focusing on one thing at a time, rather than giving somebody everything to think about and having 50, 60 questions at one time. And then lastly there, how we can take it further is to create what I call like an infographic style response, where that kind of, you said, we did. So you said this, you wanted this to happen, we've now done this. And you can create that quite nice in terms of a poster or a digital kind of flyer that can go out after it, that can demonstrate that we've listened to you, and here are the things that we've done because of your feedback, and thank you very much. You thank the staff for their feedback, you thank them for being honest, and here's what we've done since then. So it's a nice way to kind of finish that off and say, you've said this, and because of it, we've done this. And that also allows people not to complain and say, well, you never listen to us, nothing ever happens. Well, actually, look what's happened since we took your views on board the last time. Okay, let me stop sharing there. Hopefully that has been useful. That's given you a couple of things to think about in terms of the management of the school, how you're being clear with your communication, and how you're really kind of taking on board staff's views and their feedback, and crucially listening and doing something about it. So it's really important that you do that. You don't just take the information and not do anything with it, because that's worse. You've got to do something with it. If that's been useful, hopefully I will see you again on one of our other webinars. If this is the first one you've seen, then go back and have a look at some of the other ones we've done on all the different pillars of wellbeing that Satchel Pulse have created. And yeah, thank you very much indeed. Hope it's been useful.